Hello, everyone. This is Deb McBride, and welcome to my astrology podcast. Today is Monday, December 3rd, 2018, and I am broadcasting from beautiful Costa Rica, Escazú. So, lots to talk about today. First, we're going to handle some business. So, as you may or may not know, Blog Talk Radio and Spreaker podcasting have merged, and they merged about, over a year ago or so. And Blog Talk Radio informed me last week that they are discontinuing my podcasting package. So I cannot continue to do podcasts on Blog Talk Radio, but they told me to send everything over to Spreaker if I wanted to do it that way. And that is perfectly fine. So that is what I've decided to do. And actually, it's going to be a lot better and a lot more accessible because Spreaker can embed, and this is what I've already done, I've embedded a podcast broadcast on my website, and you can actually go right to my website, to the podcast page, and listen to my podcast, and all of them are available there for your listening pleasure. So what's going to happen is, this is going to be my last accessible podcast on Blog Talk Radio. And next week, I will be broadcasting from the same place, but will be available on Spreaker. I don't think my podcast will be available on Blog Talk Radio after this, or I'm not sure how that's going to work, but you can come to the page and look. Everything that I'm doing here now is going to go over to Spreaker automatically, and Spreaker will also upload to iTunes once I do that. Now, I went to iTunes before to find my show page, and they did not have the November 27th podcast up yet. And today's the 3rd, and that was a week ago. So for whatever reason, they're not up to date. So I can tell you this, my podcast will always be available on my website, and that's debmcbride.com. So that all being said, here we are. It's December 3rd, and we're going to talk astrology. So it's been an interesting few days because we are now back in the Scorpio realms. We have Mercury gone into Scorpio, and we have Venus gone back into Scorpio. Mercury is retrograde in Scorpio. Mercury has moved back into Scorpio and is retrograde there. And Venus has moved out of Libra, where it had retrograded back into, and is now in Scorpio again for a good month or so. An interesting thing. So Mercury went into Scorpio Saturday morning, wee hours of Saturday morning, and Venus went in yesterday at 11 a.m. my time, Costa Rica time, or noon, New York time. And Saturday morning, I got up and I walked into my living room, and I made breakfast first, and I saw something on the floor in the living room. And I looked at it, and I took a picture of it, and it was an insect for sure. It was a creature. And I thought it was a spider. And I escorted it out with the broom. So I didn't want to deal with it. Obviously, I didn't want to kill it. So I escorted it out. It was not terribly recognizable, but it had very, very long legs and long things extending from it. So I went through my day and contacted a friend of mine who's a nature guide, who I contact with all these kinds of questions. And I sent him the picture on a text, and he said, "Oh, that's a tailless scorpion." So my day started on Saturday with a scorpion. When Mercury had gone into Scorpio and Venus was about to go back into Scorpio. So here we are. I started my weekend with the scorpion. And actually, my friend told me that they don't sting because they don't have the tail that does the stinging. I told him the scorpion kind of looked lost in the house. He just kind of didn't know where he was going. He wasn't running around. He wasn't doing anything. He was just kind of like, by the couch. And I just escorted him out, and he was a little bit tumbled on the patio, but actually got it together and left. So better for him or her, whatever. Anyway, and then my friend sent me a couple of creepy pictures of tailless scorpions. And there you go. So we are back in the Scorpio realm. So we're in the underworld, and before we can emerge from the underworld, we have to take care of some tasks and some details. on the one hand, Mercury is the planet of communication, of the planet of intellect, the planet of speaking, writing, articulating. And it is where we need to do some very deep thinking for a little while now. So it went back in on Monday the 1st at 6:12 a.m. New York time. And it will stay until the 12th at 6:43 p.m. Eastern time, New York time. And that means that for these next days, week and a half or so, we get to do some very deep, profound thinking about life, about getting answers, about technically kind of where we've been, where we're going. Remember, it went back into Scorpio, so we've got to like finish up some details. Now, what's good about this is so far, thank God, I don't feel terrible because all that Scorpio in October was really pretty swampy. And while I like Scorpio just as much as the next guy, Scorpio, too much Scorpio energy or too much of any water really, but Scorpio, because it's very deep and intense, too much Scorpio energy really gives you, a lot of angst or agita, as my family would say, agita. And it's too much. It's very, very intense. So here's what we do. We have to use the energy wisely. So Venus went back in on Sunday at 12:02 New York time. And between the two of them now, here we go. They are pointing at Pluto because they are ruled by Pluto right now because they're in Scorpio. Pluto is in Capricorn. Capricorn's ruled by Saturn, which is where Saturn is. So we go from Mercury and Venus to Pluto to Saturn. And that means that Saturn is once again hosting a bunch of planets. Saturn is again rulership over itself, Pluto, Mercury, Venus. The good news is that the sun is in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. So we're still in this Jupiterian time, and it is feeling different than it did back then because back in October, Jupiter was still in Scorpio. So now we've got some fiery energy movement happening, and it's not all swamp, and it's not all digging through the mud and trying to find the lotus flower coming up out of the mud. It's really about digging in and connecting with some deep information that's probably hidden from us because Scorpio is always operating in the dark. So when we deal with the Scorpio component of the zodiac, we are dealing with what's hidden, what's secret, what's a mystery, and, use this is exciting. So since we've got the sun and Jupiter in Sag, and we've got Mars in Pisces, which is making a nice aspect with these Scorpio planets, this is a great time to do some deep sea diving emotionally. And unless you really are a deep sea diver and you want to go, do some deep sea diving. So this is really a good time to do something that is really emotionally potent. So if you are inclined, you want to dig in deep, you want to connect with your darker side or your unseen side, your mysterious side, your side that is complicated, complex, deep, profound, intense, and embrace it. Since everything's pointing to Saturn, it's good to do work in the emotional realm. It's good to dive in deep because Sag is the adventurer. Remember, we've got the sun and Jupiter and Sag. And so we can take this opportunity to dive in, do the deep sea diving thing and see things and not come out like devastated, come out liberated. And that's the happiness of Jupiter and Sag, is that we have an opportunity to go take this energy and become liberated as a result of it. This was not the case in October. Everything was in Scorpio, and we had to deal with the scorpionic components of it. And while Jupiter was at the end of Scorpio, up until November 7th, we really had to deal with that heavy energy. And I think that Scorpio is a plodding energy. Since we've got so much fire going on now, I do believe it's a better complement to the Scorpio energy, and we can kind of do that dive, that deep sea dive, do the work, and come out liberated and free and open and feeling opportunity. So that's really important. So that's the most important thing we can do right now is look at these Scorpio planets And it's probably got something to do with love, money, relationships, and self-expression and creativity. Because this is Saturn, ruling by Saturn, but it's really Mercury and Venus. So Mercury about communication. Mercury is, how we connect with people intellectually, how we connect with people verbally, how we communicate in the world. So interestingly enough, I'm finding all of my communication outlets are telling me that I have to change something. So all during this retrograde. So now, of course, I just told you about Blog Talk Radio. And then my cell phone account, they were discontinuing the platform I was on, and they gave me a better deal for the same amount of money. So that was good. So I had to change that. So another communication item. And then there's something else. Oh, there were a couple other things that I had to do where things were changing. They discontinued the phone. They discontinued the podcast thing. I had to change both of those. And then, my blog on my website, it wasn't working properly. So I had to send out the last blog differently than I normally do. And I found that people liked it better. So I want to keep doing it the way I just did it with MailChimp. So yeah, so there were 3 methods of communication, and I really need to work with like some different components now. So that's been my Mercury retrograde story. And here we are. So today the moon entered Scorpio this afternoon, and it's in Scorpio until Wednesday evening when it goes into Sagittarius. It's going to be void at 4:53 p.m. on Wednesday in Scorpio in New York time zone. And what's happening is, so now we've got 3 planets in Scorpio because the moon is there. So everyone who is experiencing this deep dive, it can be an emotional component of it these next couple of days. And we are looking at, these next couple of days with all the Scorpio energy. And then on Thursday, Mercury goes direct. So Mercury will go direct at 4:22 p.m. Eastern time. And this is good news because this is going to be the end of the retrogrades for a while. As far as inner planets, if it wasn't Mars, it was Venus. It was Mercury, and then it was Mars, and then it was Venus, and then it was Mercury again. And so it's just been so complicated between eclipses and retrogrades, and it's been such a heavy time. So we can finally move forward with some things. So obviously we can bring this sort of Mercury retrograde to a close. Mercury will still be in Scorpio for a few days, but at least it's going to be direct, and the sort of going within should bear some fruit. Usually when Mercury goes direct, some fruit is born. We get some connection and some feeling of liberation or recognition, or like, hey, yeah, this is actually really good. The last Mercury going direct, actually, yeah. So it was Mercury during the eclipses, and that was pretty nasty. That one didn't feel good to me. Some people may have benefited from that, but for me in particular, that was a very difficult Mercury retrograde station direct. This one hopefully is going to be a lot better. It will station direct on Thursday, the 6th at 27 degrees of Scorpio, and Venus will be at 2 degrees. So 27 degrees of Scorpio, and it will be fully direct on Friday. And this is the end. So it's not going to stick around in Scorpio for very long because it will leave and go into Sag on the 12th, which is next week. So use this Scorpio time, use this energy for some deep thought, some deep thinking, for some deep, profound recognition of things in your life. Now, what else we have going is this week we have the sun squaring Neptune, and that's on Wednesday. And so that could be a very psychic time. It could be a very intense, powerful psychic moment. So that's actually very good. We like that. Then Thursday is the bigger day. Thursday, we've got the moon conjunct Jupiter. We've got, because then we're lightening up a bit. We've still got that Sag going. So it's going to go into Sag. Moon will go into Sag Wednesday evening, stay there Thursday, stay there Friday, and actually leave wee hours early on Saturday morning. So we've got a few good days of Sag moon, which connects with Jupiter and the sun, and that's all very good. And that means we have a new moon because the moon and the sun are connecting in Sagittarius, and this is Friday. So Friday, we have lots of beautiful things going on. So there's this new moon in Sagittarius. So this is the day after Mercury goes direct. And now we have this nice new moon, and it's at 15 degrees of Sagittarius, and it occurs at 2:20 a.m. in Eastern Standard Time. And that is a very lovely, powerful, nice new moon. And the Mars conjunct Neptune is happening that day also at 9:12 a.m. in Eastern Time. So Mars conjunct Neptune can be also very psychic, very powerful, very healthy, happy. Mars Neptune can be like, this is really one of those deep sea diving weeks where we can take all this water energy and use it to our advantage. And Mars and Neptune can also be a bit, what's the word I want to use? Underhanded. Mars is assertive, Neptune is not. And for the most part, it's usually quite lovely. It's a nice aspect. You feel good. You might want to sleep. You might not have a whole lot of energy, and maybe it's a really good time to sleep, but it really is a lovely aspect, together, and the two of them. And so it's a really profound time because they don't get together very often. And so they're going to get together now for the first time in 2 years, and they won't get together again for another 2 years. So it's a good day to meditate. It's a good day to kind of connect, tune in, get your astrology read, do a lot of incredible psychic work, and because it's all in Pisces. Mars and Neptune will be in Pisces, are in Pisces. And so that's a really good thing to practice. Saturday, the moon goes into Capricorn. And so we have the Capricorn energy coming back Saturday morning, 7:01 a.m. Eastern Time. And it's going to stay in Capricorn on Sunday and then Monday, the 10th. So we've got a weekend of moon occulting Saturn on Sunday and then moon occulting Pluto that night. So there's a whole lot of Saturn Pluto on Sunday. So with all this, we're still in Scorpio. So right now, okay, so we've got the moon in Scorpio now. We're going to get a break with the, Sagittarius moon for a few days, and then things are going to go into Capricorn. So what we're doing is we're bouncing all the Scorpio energy to Pluto, then to Saturn. And then when the moon goes into Capricorn, then we're going to have 3 planets in Capricorn, and the moon is going to bounce to Saturn and to Pluto again, but in a very different way, in a much more direct way. So it can be very productive. We can do some very productive things on Sunday. We can get some productive things done. If you have some work to do, good. So, take your Sunday and get your tasks done. That's good. Don't work too hard, but Saturday, Sunday, much more Capricornian energy. Sunday, Monday, the moon will go void at 4:27 p.m. Eastern Time, and then go into Aquarius 2 hours later, 6:39 p.m. So thankfully, moon in Aquarius, that's going to break things up. That's going to be a different energy. And so really what we're focused on this week is the new moon, is Mercury going direct, and sort of working with the Scorpio energy, because this is what's important right now. It is important to continue, the good work we've been doing with the Venus, retrograde and then in Scorpio again. And Venus is going to move out of her shadow, which means she will pass the point where she retrograded. And Venus won't do that until about the 17th, 18th. So that's 2 weeks from now. But it's going to finally mean that retrograde period is over. So we're still kind of working on things, and think about what you started. Think about what you started back in September when Venus went into Scorpio and started the change and started this transformation that she always does with Scorpio energy, and work with the elements, what you were doing at that time, what you were working with, what you felt, how you felt, what was all good, Understand that what you're doing is for the betterment in the end. You're going to be doing these things to empower yourself. What are empowering things to do? Like I said, meditate is one of them. Do some writing exercises. Do some answering of deep questions that you've been pondering, that you've been dealing with in your life. This is relationships and finances and people in your life, and how open is your heart, because Venus in Scorpio, and that's your heart. And can you be open, and can it feel good, and can you allow yourself to be vulnerable? And if you can't, what is it? It's a good time, since we are pointing back at Saturn, it's a good time to recognize and overcome one's darkest fears. And sometimes that, like I said, takes some deep sea diving, but that actually is beneficial in the long run, because Saturn is always the boundary. Saturn is where we cross over. In the planetary lineup, we've got Saturn, and then there's this big space, and then there's Uranus. And we don't see Uranus, Neptune, Pluto on out. We can see up to Saturn with the naked eye, and you're looking with a telescope at anything else further out. So in our conscious realm, in our consciousness, we have Saturn as the boundary keeper, and Saturn is the boundaries with its rings, and Saturn telling us, okay, this is where we cross over into the ethereal realms, where we get into the deeper unconscious stuff. What it's showing us, though, is that Saturn is the gatekeeper between, our conscious mind and then what we get into the subconscious, unconscious realms of our mind. So pressing on Saturn and pushing past it and getting into this more unconscious stuff, things that are not readily available to us, that is where we want to go with this Scorpio energy. And Saturn is always representative of, I don't need to do that. I feel perfectly fine in my life. Saturn can be very mundane in many ways, but it's an interesting thing, because when we're dealing with Saturn, especially in its own sign, as we are going to be dealing with it for the next couple of years, Saturn shows you where you have to overcome your deepest fear and go past that boundary and go past, into the unconscious realm, so you can connect with whatever is truly going on that makes things go bump in the night for you, and why the patterns keep happening, and why the same pattern keeps happening over and over again. We don't get to have a different pattern until we go past Saturn to figure out what's really going on and find out what that is. Saturn feels spooky to us. Saturn feels like it's so walled off. The place where Saturn is in your chart and the aspects it makes, Saturn is so walled off that we often think that there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do there. Well, my life is just like this. It's always been like this. It'll always be like this. This is the nature of my life. I can't expect more in that department. But it's not true, because whatever Saturn is doing in your chart and whatever Saturn is telling you or showing you is so much deeper than, well, that's it, I can't go any further. Because Saturn is encouraging you to go further. Because once you do go past Saturn, then all the good stuff happens. Then all the juicy stuff happens. Then all the wild ride happens. So this is where we have to really do that deep sea diving. And that is where we have to connect with whatever is beyond Saturn. Saturn is, Neptune's the trickster, Mercury's the trickster. Saturn's a bit of a trickster itself too. And you wouldn't know that. But to my estimation, when I'm dealing with Saturn, it's like you're fooled into sort of complacency. You're like, okay, that's it. I can't change that. That's the way my life is. That's not something I have control over, but you do. And that's where Saturn's not telling you the whole story. Yes, it does put up a bridge. Yes, there's a wall. Yes, but you have to knock the wall down, go beyond it, go right into that fear. And that's where you're going to get the rewards. So that is a blessing in and of itself. And wherever Saturn is in your chart, have a look at that and know that's where you probably have the biggest, rewards available to you once you get past the fear. See, that's the thing with Saturn. It's all about work. And if you do the work, and if you focus and you commit in that area of your life, and you really work on it and really get through it all, that is where you're going to find the greatest reward, because Saturn, once you've done all the work, Saturn gives you the gift. It gives you the little pot of gold at the end of the rainbow because you've earned it. And that's the thing with Saturn, you have to earn it. So there's Saturn in the sky in Capricorn now, and then you have Saturn in your chart. And we have to see where they connect with each other and where they're not connecting with each other. They sort of resonate things that are present in your chart. Even if it's in the sky in Capricorn, it's going to resonate someplace for you in your chart. We always have to compare where it is in the sky to where it is in our chart, even if they're not making an aspect to each other, because it's going to ring chimes there. Okay, so that's it. We are on this mystical scorpionic journey. Venus will be in Scorpio the rest of the month, so we've just used this energy wisely, use the new moon to be happy, celebrate Sagittarius, and celebrate this fiery energy that's going to allow us to give us the energy to do this work we need to do. And that is it for the week. I am Deb McBride. My website is debmcbride.com. My Instagram and Twitter are @DebAstrology, and both of them I use regularly and post astrological information. In Instagram, I often do videos that tell you what's going on with the aspects. And I am switching my podcast to Spreaker. So if you're going to look for this, there won't be a Blog Talk Radio podcast next week. Go to Spreaker.com. That's Spreaker. And that will, if you look, that will give you a search box and you can put in Astrology with Deb McBride. Okay. And you can also look at my website because the podcast page will have the embedded podcast on it. If you are interested in an astrology session, my email is deb@debmcbride.com. And I welcome all clients. So have a good week. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.